Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Declan McConville and JP Mason back to the ACSOM Bulletin. I am John Paul Dykes, apparently, and today we will be discussing anything relating to Celtic. We'll be talking about tonight's game. We'll be talking about a return to a sold-out Celtic Park for the game-going ACSOM contributors. We'll be talking about the return of music to all of our lives, but primarily to JP Mason's life, because it's a huge part of your life, JP. Let's have a look at the Silas Barkas, Odsonne Edouards, Leo Hjeld, the new centre-half incoming, the new right-back incoming. But also we'll be focusing on Gordon Strachan and this dual interest saga. Got loads to say about that. So first off, tonight's the night. JP, I'll start with you. How's it going to be feeling to take that walk? I know you were at the game because there was a photograph emerged on social media with you and the wee fella down there outside the game at the weekend, but it's a full house. How are you going to be feeling? And a European game at the same time. How are you going to be feeling tonight?
I think this is when it properly hits home that, you know, we're on that path back to, dare I say it, normality. Just the last game, obviously, the game on Sunday there was completely off the scale. I mean, even though I was in a different seat, you know, to watch the rip-roaring, free-scoring, never-boring Glasgow Celtic in full flow was something else. And seeing Ryan Christie's head and his feet inside Celtic Park was also great. And it was just brilliant. But tonight's the real deal. Tonight's going to be absolutely insane. I was borderline going to be working tonight through in Edinburgh as a favour for a friend, nothing to do with King Tut's, and I managed to get out of it. So thankfully, I'm not going to be in a box office in Edinburgh, and I'll be in my seat in 102 at Celtic Park for the first time since March the 7th last year. And in many ways, it's just I think it's going to feel like it never happened. I mean, obviously it has, and we've all aged a year and a half since the last game. But I think it's going to be something else, and I can't wait.
We spoke about that during the lockdown and that, didn't we, JP? And how bizarre it was going to feel to be watching Celtic playing Aberdeen with Scott Brown in an Aberdeen jersey, and because there was this gap, you know, of not actually being there and not witnessing Celtic's demise, let's be honest, during that period. So there will be a strange kind of feeling about it. Declan, you will also be there. There was photographic evidence of you at the game against Dundee as well. What are you most looking forward to tonight?
As you both know, obviously I help run a supporters bus, and it's something that we've managed to keep going through lockdown. I've not seen, you know, everybody that goes in that bus for so long and been together. So just that drive to the game from Maryhill is going to be quite surreal. And then again, like JP saying, you know, going up to my old seat that I've sat in ever since I started going to Celtic Park, first game when it was free. So my dad's sat in that seat ever since the stadium opened up as well. So yeah, it's going to be nice to go back up there in the corner between the North Stand and the Jockstein Stand, and go back to my old seat, see old faces. And again, you know, the club doing the pause and applause tonight is going to be nice to just kind of reflect on, you know, people that won't be joining us tonight, and, you know, for everybody that has lost a loved one, like myself through this, it's going to be probably an emotional occasion for that reason, and for the reason of returning to Celtic Park. So I think it's going to be an emotional occasion, and I'm looking forward to watching Celtic get back, hopefully to winning ways after Sunday's performance, a fantastic scintillating performance, and as long as that continues, it's really enjoyable to be watching the hoops again.
There's a lot positive on today's show, absolutely no doubt, but tonight was an opportunity, I think, after that whole period, JP, of fans not being in the stadium, fans back in the club, like no other time in the history, really, knowing last season that we weren't going to get back into the stadiums anytime soon, backing them again this season without any guarantees that we were going to get back. Obviously, it's transpired that we have, and it's great that we're getting back. Was it an open goal for the Celtic board to regain a bit of a connection with the Celtic fans in relation to the ticketing of this. And I know that the counter-argument of the business heads will be, but we sold it out. But surely it was an opportunity for the club to say thank you to the season ticket holders in relation to the charging and the ticketing of this particular game.
Yeah, I listened to, as I always do, I listened to the podcast yesterday with Kev, Colin and Brian, and I thought it was really good. It was a really good show that sort of talked about a lot of different narratives of the situation. And, you know, Kev's got his principles, and I respect them. And I think my only gripe as a season ticket holder is someone who's shelled out, you know, 1,200 quid in the last 2 years for very little for, you know, a stream on a TV. I think the fact that the 9,000 got into the Midtjylland game and nothing's been taken into consideration for the other however many 41,000 or however many it is 41,000 that didn't get into that game. So if you're being technical about it, we should have had a European game on our season ticket, but then it's just been classed as well. You got it on your pass to paradise, so that was you taken care of. But I think in these circumstances, they should have definitely catered for those people because it's part of the product. And I'm one of those people. And yeah, okay, you could say, well, you've gone ahead and bought a ticket anyway, but there was never going to be a case that I wasn't going to be at the game tonight. You know, even if it had been 40 quid, I would have paid 40 quid. You know, it means too much to me. And if you want to call that them pulling on our heartstrings, I don't know if that is the case or if it is just a business decision, as you've said. But yeah, I don't know what the logistics of trying to figure out how to give those people that didn't get into the Midtjylland game a free ticket. Can't have been that hard. Maybe I'm being naive, but that would be my gripe. As for it just being given as a free gig to everybody, I can see why people would say that, and I understand the anger. But unfortunately for me, it's not going to stop me being there because wild horses wouldn't stop me being there tonight.
No, you know, this is the balance though. You know, had 12,000 tickets been sold, the club might have taken notice. They won't take notice whilst they ticket the event, the game, and it sells out. Dick, what's your feelings on this in terms of PR and also reconnecting with the Celtic fan base? It was a good opportunity, don't you think?
Yeah, it was a perfect opportunity. 42,000 odd season ticket holders obviously never got that first game free. Obviously, you know, I know Celtic don't set the limits in capacity, and that was a government decision, but it's still, Celtic had the opportunity to, you know, give everybody else that game in just a clear slate. We're not saying charge 9,000 people either, just everybody should have been given a game free, you know, as a token gesture. I think a lot of people would have appreciated that. But of course, you know, money rules the roost in the boardroom. They've looked at it, £1 million that they can pull in for tonight's game probably. And then they'll have all their other stuff and programmes and whatnot. So again, it's completely driven by finance, and you know, this propaganda thing that they wheel out of Celtic family. There's no Celtic family to the Celtic board. The Celtic family are the fans and people in the stadium. They don't really care whatever financial position anybody's in. So a really good opportunity to right the wrongs tonight, which they never did. But like JP, wild horses wouldn't stop me going back tonight, and we just need to kind of go along as we are, and that's it.
Yeah, a wee bit disappointing. I'm constantly disappointed with modern football, JP. Things happen all the time, and I just shake my head in disbelief. You know, you look at the amount. I know. I'm sitting watching it, thinking, does anybody actually believe all that nonsense where I'm crying at the press conference? Because nobody in the modern game. You know, when you look at, from our perspective, the homegrown heroes that come through the ranks and he'll never leave Celtic, want a bet. Because if the carrot's big enough, they'll go anywhere. And I think that's the case, obviously, with modern football clubs as well. It's all about the dollar. Plenty to discuss today, and we will get to the game because it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, after the resounding performance at the weekend, the free scoring, certainly, JP. But there's loads of other discussion points. I'm really keen to get onto the Strachan and the dual interest rules and have a wee look at Article 13 and share our views on that one as well. But there's plenty more to discuss. JP Mason, you're a massive music fan. You're sitting in front of a huge music collection. You were at King Tut's on Monday night. That was the return of live music to the venue you are closely involved with. It was a female artist called Brooke Combe, who is from Bonnyrigg, not far from where I'm sitting right here. And Brooke, of course, came in to a State of Mind studio fairly recently and shared with us a couple of her tracks on an acoustic level. She did a wee interview. She was humble and absolutely spectacular. What a talent, to sit a couple of metres away from her, JP. She blew us away here at the studio. What was Monday like for yourself, getting back into the groove, and also Brooke Combe, first ever gig?
I mean, absolutely unbelievable to think that was her first ever gig, because genuinely standing inside the stage, you would never have known that she'd not been on a stage before, because she worked the room. She was engaging with people in the crowd, like a pro, having banter with the people that were shouting stuff out, but not in a kind of, I've seen people do that before, and it ends up getting a bit hammy and amateur-y, and they don't really know where it's going to go, and they don't know when to stop and shut it down. But she was totally on it, and I tell you what, she had a really great band with her. She's got good people around her. She had a really good tour manager, James, and she's got a great agent as well, who could help her with things in terms of the other artists on his roster.
Mm-hmm.
So she's going to do the business. I think. I don't know. I can't predict where she's going to go, but judging by that performance on Monday and selling out King Tut's as your first show, she's definitely got a good path laid out for her. And she's just like, her voice is great. And, there's sometimes you see people at King Tut's and you just get that feeling, and you know that something's going to happen for them, and it's going to get bigger. How big that will be will depend on, her luck and how things work for her going forward. But she will definitely play on a bigger stage than King Tut's. There's no question in my mind that will be the case. So, and I mentioned to her when she arrived, I said, I first saw you on a State of Mind. You know Paul John Dykes. She was like, oh yeah, he's a legend. I'm like, there you go. Straight from
wow.
His mouth. There you go. Yeah.
And she's a Celtic fan. Sorry to break anybody's hearts out there, but she supports the famous Glasgow Celtic.
Oh, we didn't get on to Celtic actually.
Oh, there you go.
Celtic, yeah.
That was off the record. I've just broken the record. So, Dick, I want to talk about the game. Of course I do. And we'll be talking about the predicted lineups and any changes that Ange wants to make. But there's a lot of big talking points coming through. And, we really need to strip the whole Gordon Strachan saga back a wee bit and have a look at that and why that's ruffling feathers at SFA Towers. Now, we are actually streaming. We normally stream on 3 destinations. It's normally my own Twitter page whilst we build up the ACSOM Twitter page. And, of course, there will come a point where it starts going out on ACSOM's Twitter. We can only put it on one Periscope, so one Twitter, unfortunately. It also goes out on YouTube under a State of Mind. And normally it would go out on the ACSOM Facebook. But now we're going out on 8 destinations. So we're basically all over the place, including Twitch, which I'm still learning about. And I had an interesting wee look at it yesterday, and I was watching someone in Japan singing karaoke. And it was strangely intriguing. So there's Twitch for you, and ACSOM is now on that platform, amongst other places. I'm going to jump right into the Gordon Strachan situation now. Gordon Strachan's name has come up loads over the last year. We've spoken about his views on Celtic, the fact that he was his name was uttered numerous times in relation to a director of football or technical director role. His son, obviously 2 sons, are employed by Celtic currently, and the fact that he's a very successful former Celtic manager. So the club, JP, announced this week that he will be working alongside Dom Mackay in a 3-month consultancy period where he will be looking at the football academy, the women's team and the B team with a view to feeding back his recommendations to Dom Mackay on how to develop these areas of the football department. Now, that announcement divided opinion. Before we move on to whose feathers it's ruffled, what was your thoughts on that announcement and the reaction of the Celtic fans once the announcement was made, JP?
It's just because he's a divisive character, isn't it? People either like Gordon Strachan or they absolutely hate him, and that is within the Celtic support. It was always the case. I remember it well when it was the last the last 3 years of my original season ticket in the Jock Stein stand were the last 3 years under Strachan. Obviously including the final year where it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, people still to this day go on about how terrible the football was and how, you know, this, that and the next thing. But you got to point to the fact that the success in the Champions League qualifications, the players that he brought to the club. Me personally, I never had a problem with Gordon Strachan. And in actual fact, if you saw that picture I put up of Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink and me the other day in Earth Castle, 14 years ago. That's absolutely terrifying. That was 14 years ago. It was not long after Strachan had been chinned in the street by some Celtic fan and given a load of abuse. And there was a newspaper article at that time, you know, where he addressed it because the guy had just come up and had a go at him over something to do with Celtic or whatever. And I went up to him in the hotel that morning and just went up and said, Mr. Strachan, just want to say I'm a season ticket holder at Celtic. And I just want to thank you for everything you've done at the football club. And he looked at me in the eye and he went, thank you, son. I appreciate that. Thank you, son. And I was just trying to, as one guy, just trying to readdress this kind of idea that everybody hated him. I also interestingly watched him drop Magic Zarafsky in the foyer of that hotel that morning because Zarafsky had been starting before that game against Falkirk that day. And I saw him take him aside into a little bit away from the foyer, and the next day he came out, and Zarafsky kind of had his face chipping him a bit. And then I heard the radio as we were driving away from the hotel that morning saying, "No Magic Zarafsky in the lineup today. He's been dropped to the bench." And I was like, I saw that actually happen. So, but with regards to his appointment with this 3-month role, I'm very much the same as the guys yesterday. You know, mostly I'm unaffected by it. If, as Brian said, if he was going to be appointed on like some 2 or 3 year deal with us, like director of football role or whatever, then maybe I would have been a bit like, that isn't really as progressive as we would have maybe liked, because he's no Ralph Rangnick, put it that way. I would ask Celtic fans who have got issue with this, would they have had the same issue if it was Martin O'Neill that had been brought in to do this role? Or is it just purely because it's Strachan and they see it as like, oh, well, Strachan's son's there and this is an old pals act and everything else? At the end of the day, if he's doing something that's going to benefit our football club, it doesn't matter who he is or what he's done in the past. You know, I don't really think that he would be brought in just, what's 3 months? A 3 months salary is not going to set him up for life, is it? It's not as if we're just giving this gig to help him along financially. I'm nonplussed about it. I'm more concerned about Ange Postecoglou in the Celtic first 11 than anything else at the moment, because everything else to me is long term and obviously needs to be addressed. But right now we need to sort out the first 11 on the pitch, and I'm far more concerned about that and whether Ange Postecoglou is happy with what he's getting and what he's got. That's my concern.
When I look back on Strachan, a bit like yourself, I know I've spoken to people who were involved at the club who spoke about the period under Mowbray followed by, the period under the last season under Strachan followed by the 8 or 9 months under Mowbray, and how, interest in terms of season tickets, merch sales, Celtic View sales and all that kind of stuff were affected. There was a period of time there, JP, where, they were down. Season tickets were down. I've spoken to people who stopped going during that period. And, that's not a decision I'm going to criticise. It's not something I've ever done in my lifetime, is supporting Celtic, regardless who was in charge. I've certainly seen worse managers managing Celtic than Gordon Strachan, that is for sure. So when it was announced, and I had a look at the official announcement and the role and the responsibilities, obviously there was this chat around the fact that Dominic Mackay was asked about it, because during that fan media conference, the rumours at that time were that Gordon Strachan might be a name that the club would consider for a director of football. He was asked about that. He said it wasn't happening. People were then saying, I thought it wasn't happening. This means that Dom Mackay's got nothing to do with the decision, and then they start deconstructing it. And I don't think that is the case. I mean, I think, like you say, JP, I kind of play it down to the point where it's quite clear that those areas of the football department need some kind of focus. It's a 3-month consultancy period. If he was consulting for a number of clubs, I think that would be okay. But because he is also employed by Dundee, that's caused some issue, which we're going to discuss as well. But before we do that, Dec, I'm going to ask you your reaction to Strachan's return to Celtic Park.
Yeah, I mean, for the past year, obviously in the past, he's always been on Celtic TV, and I don't think he's actually employed by the club, but because it's a kind of freelance, because he appears and whatever else. But I always found that very strange that he was so much involved in the match day base at the club. Yeah, from a broadcasting perspective, but there so much. I mean, if you're a Dundee fan and he's there, you'd be questions asked. I think as well as that, everybody's looking at it from the perspective that his son's obviously our first team coach. One son's a scout. People will be asking, whether it's 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days. What was the recruitment process for this? Was he the best candidate to take the job? Or the reason that Gordon Strachan's arrived back at Celtic Park is pure and simply because he's a former manager of the club. We've got ties already with the family. We know he's easy to talk to in terms of the communication, I think, between him and Dermot Desmond. I think it's very much a Dermot Desmond appointment. I mean, the two of them seem to get on well with each other. They've spoken about that. I think, again, from the Celtic support, some of Gordon's comments post-match at times last season were very much out of touch with what we were watching in front of us as the building was collapsing. So, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens after 3 months, because if it's 3 months, again, probably like you two guys, I'm unfazed about it, because I just hope it be 3 months and then cheerio. But as long as it's not 3 months and it's a trial and then he comes in permanently, because again, as from a perspective of a fan, I would like to know the recruitment process for that and why he was the person to do that. And I think a lot of people, I used to go to Scotland games under Gordon. It wasn't great. He never qualified. I know it's been something that wasn't just him, but Steve Clarke was the guy that eventually broke that mould. A lot of people rubbished his comments in genetics with Scotland too. People will say he's been out of the kind of modern game in terms of club level for so long that he'd just be out of touch in terms of youth set up and looking throughout the club. So there's a lot to dissect in it. It'll be interesting to see what happens after the 3 months. But as you two say, I'm probably in the same camp as JP, that I'm more concerned about the first team in the park, what players are coming in the door, and Ange Postecoglou at the moment.
Yes, we'll come back actually to that second string, the Colts, the B team, because obviously there has been developments with Leo Held, and we'll have a wee chat about that. But on the subject of Gordon Strachan and the dual interest role or not, he is employed by Dundee as a technical director and has been for some time now. And this is going to be reviewed by the SFA's Professional Game Board, because they would have expected under Article 13 to have been informed of any developments in relation to having a dual role. As I said before, he's not employed by Celtic. If it was consultancy for both clubs, there wouldn't be an issue, but because he's employed by another club, that could be an issue. But that actually raises a wider issue, I would suggest. So the rule states any person involved in any capacity whatsoever in the management or administration of a club cannot be involved with another club at the same time unless they have the prior written consent of the board. Right. Now, I posted something on ACSOM's Twitter yesterday. It was an interview I did back in 2013 with Jimmy Calderwood. And this was before the infamous interview he did with Tam Cowan and Stuart Cosgrove on the radio. I didn't upload it until 2014 because I didn't have a YouTube channel. But he basically states that David Murray contacted him whilst he was managing in Holland and in the Netherlands rather, and says to him, you want to come back to Scotland? Jimmy Calderwood thought it was because he wanted him as a Rangers manager. Turns out his best mate, Gavin Masterton, who just happens to be at that time the treasurer of the Bank of Scotland, so you can join the dots on what was to ensue there, was wanting him for the Dunfermline job, but the job was offered by David Murray. So if we go back to the actual Article 13, involved in any capacity whatsoever in the management or administration of a club cannot be involved with another club at the same time. So David Murray is offering Jimmy Calderwood the manager's job for Dunfermline Athletic whilst he is the chairman at Rangers Football Club. Now that, I would suggest, was a dual interest. Now people say get over it, or you can't actually go and punish a club that effectively can't be punished, i.e. Rangers before administration and liquidation. So you've got to forget about it. But I think from the club's perspective, Celtic's perspective. If they have to take any kind of punishment here, and the punishment would be that we can't actually employ Gordon Strachan, or he will resign from Dundee to do 3 months consultancy. And if the club are going to take that on the chin, then they should. But on the proviso that past misdemeanours have to be investigated and investigated fully. Because there's no point in a 3-month consultancy period, right, being flagged when something, right, is horrific as offering a fellow Scottish club's a manager to a fellow. That is astonishing in terms of dual interest. Now, it goes even deeper. It goes even wider. So about that time when I was doing the interview, I was interviewing a lot of figures because we were actually fundraising for Dunfermline when they were in administration. We raised a lot of money for them at that time. And I interviewed people such as the secretary of the club, or the ex-secretary of Dunfermline, Paul de Mello, and Pip Yates. You'll remember Pip Yates, the physio. He was a physio at Scotland, Dunfermline and Rangers for various spells. He still has a practice in Dunfermline. And they advised us that Graham Souness was also on the payroll. Now, at this time, Souness was a manager down south. He was on the payroll at Stadio Group, which is a company owned by Gavin Masterton. And this was at the same time that Rangers paid him an EBT. So I'm just stating facts. I'm not saying that was what the EBT was for. That, again, would be a dual interest issue that should be investigated, if indeed Celtic are investigated over the issue with Gordon Strachan. So I've said my piece on it because I think that it's shocking that it's even been raised in terms of Strachan, because he's not employed by Celtic. It's like Dunfermline Athletic employ Jackie McNamara to do consultancy work right now. But Jackie could do the same consultancy work with Partick Thistle, Celtic, Edinburgh City, any other team that he wants, because he's not employed by them. It's like, having a freelance motivational speaker going around clubs. It doesn't really matter if you do all the clubs or one club, because they're not employed. So for Celtic to be pulled over the coals on this one, JP, I think, as a club, we should take that. We should take it right on the chin, on the proviso that past misdemeanours are fully investigated. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, it's pretty interesting to find that all out. Who is the club that David Murray nearly took over before he got Rangers?
Ayr United.
Was it Ayr United? I thought it was Ayr United. I was wondering if it was Dunfermline there for a second. But no, it was like Kev said yesterday, Celtic could have probably just kept quiet about this and nobody would have known that this was going on. But obviously they've decided to release a statement to address it because of the fact that it was leaked to the media, and also probably to be transparent for the authorities. It'll be interesting to find out if anything does come from the alleged, misdemeanour of appointing Gordon Strachan as a consultant now, especially given what you've just said. So you would also like to think that the club would maybe have done their due diligence on that before they did it. It's not as if, suddenly you appoint or announce this and then go, oh, wait a minute, this might be against the rules. Surely to goodness they'll have basically checked that out, before going ahead with it. It would seem bizarre to me if they hadn't. So I wouldn't expect anything to come of it, to be honest. I think like you said, if you're a freelancer, you can go and do work elsewhere, as long as you're not taking on full-time capacity, and it's not full-time capacity. So, and just with regards to what he might be doing, if Gordon Strachan is the guy that's charged with going around and looking at setups in other clubs to then base and make recommendations for Celtic, I've not got an issue with that. The guy is clearly, whether you like him or not, he's clearly passionate about Celtic. And if you're passionate about something, then that's going to reflect in the work that you do. He's not just going to sit there picking up a 3-month, whatever it is, salary, check, whatever. He's not just going to sit with his feet up and, watch the games and watch training. I think he'll actually want to do something good for the club, because that shines through. Whether you like him I know he's a spiky individual and he's made enemies here and there, but, a lot of people talk well about him as well. I've seen a lot of people sticking up for him on Twitter as well, ex-players and things like that. So, that's our 2 bobs worth.
And he's a big pal of Tim Booth from the band James.
He's a big James fan. Yeah, that's right. I've seen him at James gigs. He loves them. Yeah.
It's tremendous, because obviously Tim is a Leeds United fan, and when Gordon Strachan played for Leeds, Tim Booth wrote to him says, you're my favourite player. And he asked him for some advice because he wanted to figure out how you remain relevant within your field as you move into like the kind of like later years, because obviously Strachan had played, I think he played for Leeds up until he was about 37 or 38. He then went to Coventry. He was still playing at 40. And Tim Booth wrote to him and asked him that. And a friendship ensued. So as you say, he goes to the James gigs, and James have been going to Celtic games for a number of years. And Saul Davis spoke about that on the podcast about a year and a half ago, how they were, turning up at grounds expecting to be given the full hospitality treatment, but Strachan had just given them normal briefs, and they were just to stand with the likes of you and I, which is quite funny and typical, apparently, of Gordon Strachan. Declan, what's your thoughts on anything Celtic does as a furore? And very quickly, this was deemed as a possible breach of an article of the SFA's rule book and all this kind of stuff. And it's quite hard to swallow when rules have been broken in Scottish football for a generation and not challenged. Yeah,
it's very ironic. Whether people are happy with the appointment of Gordon Strachan or not, I think you take him out the equation and what it is, if you look at other clubs' misdemeanours and whatever else, it is very ironic that, right away down our throats, but other clubs just seem to get away with it and nothing happens. So in many ways, it might be good for us to kind of get a slap in the wrist for this, and then for Celtic to then grow up here and start to challenge the SFA and a few points that they've shied away from in the past few years. So we'll see what happens with it. But it's very ironic that right away, even journalists, one who got the prediction at the weekend very badly wrong at Tannadice, and was right on it right away. So yeah, it's no real surprise that people want to even yesterday's article. I mean, if you, just to touch on the press, talking about Odsonne Edouard the day after another team gets dumped out of the Champions League. I mean, it was a non-story, but let's say something bad about Celtic. It's bizarre, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with this situation. I'm sure something will come out of it, and whether it's Gordon Strachan will work for Celtic in that advisory role for 3 months, or we will get the slap in the wrist and maybe grow up here. One thing will happen out, yeah.
It was Mikey Stewart that replied to Tom English's tweet and basically said, slapped him down and said, no, Gordon Strachan's actually a good guy and very knowledgeable about football. Because Tom English's tweet was absolutely insane. I can't believe he went for him in such a harsh way. I mean, it was worse than a lot of tweets I saw from Celtic fans. It was quite personal. So I was quite pleased to see somebody like Michael Stewart just go back and go, wait a minute, that's not cool.
He's often a voice of reason. That's Dex, pal. Dex, a friend of the Stars, as you know. It could well be the first opportunity for Don Mackay to go toe-to-toe with the authorities, something I'm sure he'll become accustomed to whilst he's at Celtic Park. Danny Payton, who is watching on Facebook, because we're streaming all over Facebook at the moment, take personal opinions out of it. He hasn't been involved in top-level club football for over a decade, during which time the structures of youth and women's football has been transformed. He's wholly ill-equipped for the role to give overviews on what he doesn't know. I think he's done a fair bit of work with the academy up in Dundee. But, in terms of the B team, obviously that's a new thing. And I can see the merit in bringing somebody in to try and have that as part of a function that if you play for the B team, the step up to the A team is made easier by the fact that we're playing the same system. There's the same kind of strategy. There's the same kind of philosophy. It's something that's worked for a lot of big clubs in the past, but we've never really had that procession. And if you've got it at academy level, to B team level, to first team level, absolutely makes sense for somebody to come in. Whether or not Gordon Strachan is that man, we'll need to wait and see. And of course, the women's game has developed massively over the last few years to the point where we're playing Champions League football this year, which will be brilliant to see. It'll be great to get the fans into the stadium to watch those games as well. Now, plenty more to discuss. Someone mentioned earlier there, Declan, about Odsonne Edouard. I found it bizarre that somebody like Charlie Adam, right, again, who had been on the same park as Odsonne Edouard just days before, was, very critical of Edouard and said that he could command a price of around £5 million should Celtic decide to sell him just now. Bizarrely, even more bizarre than that, is that Charlie Adam himself have got combined transfer fees of £13.5 million, which I find mind-boggling. And that's something else that's wrong with modern football. I just look at Eddie, I think to myself, right, his form is temporary, Declan. Anyone who has got any knowledge who have observed football for a number of years will know that Edouard is worth more than £5 million. I think the fees that have been discussed are far more accurate, and they're around the £20 million mark, Dec. What's your thoughts on this? I mean, he's obviously on his way out. We seem to be interested in Thomas Henry. We're not going to have to work quickly on that one because other clubs have shown an interest. Bordeaux have been reportedly interested in the striker. What's your thoughts on Eddie? He's still, his value has not plummeted to Ayeti levels, has it?
No, not at all. I mean, he didn't set the header alight last season, but he was still our top goal scorer. Yeah, I know a lot of them were from the penalty spot, but his goal scoring and assist record at Celtic is something that is well worth the fee of around £20 million. And as we were talking about conflicts of interest earlier, Charlie Adam, the Dundee captain, was going on a Scottish football show saying that his club should get less money and sponsorship shares from the Cinch deal because another club's kicking up about it. So, where does that come into play about? Because we've got players that are going in the media and slaughtering their own clubs too. So, yeah, I think from the perspective of Odsonne Edouard, but we've known for a long time that he's going to leave the club. People were comparing him to Furuhashi on Saturday, two completely different players. Furuhashi obviously likes to move off the ball, create the space. Edouard likes to get the ball into feet and create the goalies selling go at players. Two totally different players. It's just that obviously Kyogo probably suits what we like as Celtic fans, is that really direct football where, ball was played into the space and bang, something that we've always been kind of used to watching for the great strikers that we've had down the years. But I think, at this point in time, it's getting the right price for Odsonne Edouard, let them leave the club if that's what he's wanting to do, and investing it back into the squad. And, whether it's Thomas Henry or whoever else, that it's a good quality striker that will come in and challenge this one, who we've not touched on yet, but was absolutely sensational on Sunday. What a performance. First time a player has scored a hat-trick in his home debut since 1924. Absolutely outstanding. So I look forward to seeing this man. And whoever is French Eddie's replacement, I hope he can push this man or even form a partnership with him, because I'm really excited to see more of this man tonight, hopefully.
Brilliant. I loved how Declan just turned that into a positive there. JP, that was tremendous. A Northern Pros, which is Kevin Graham, is on Twitch. Check him out. I don't know if he's also watching a karaoke video from Japan, as I was yesterday. But he's on Twitch and he's commenting. So get on it. Get on Twitch. I think a couple of the guys are going to be gaming and stuff like that. JP, it's not my thing. I've not gamed since the old Amiga 500 days. So
New Zealand
Declan has no idea what I'm talking about. Sorry?
New Zealand
story. Yes, Sensible Soccer, Deluxe Paint 3. Oh, yes, Lemmings. Loved Lemmings. That was the Scottish creation as well. Yes, and Bart Simpson versus the Space Invaders as well was good.
Oh, my God.
Remember that? Space Mutants, that's right, X-ray glasses. Anyway, we digress. So Odsonne Edouard and obviously Kyogo, whose name adorns Declan's shirt. There's a question. Who's the first name you got in the back of your Celtic jersey, JP?
Oh, Henrik Larsson. Henrik Larsson. And then I worked in Iceland in Bathgate, and I brought it in a bag. I think I was playing fives, and I brought it in a plastic bag. Accidentally left the plastic bag in the manager's office. The next day went back and said, has anybody seen that bag with a Larson top in it? And everyone was kind of playing dumb. And I still to this day think that it was a bitter current that chucked it in the bin or something like that. Right? It was a long sleeved, it was the 97-98 home top, long sleeved Larson 7 on the back. And I was in one of those classic football shops. And I told the guy I had that, and the guy was like, "Oh man, see if you still had that." He was like, "That's worth an absolute bomb." And I was just like, that was priceless to me anyway. So Larson 7 must have.
Larson 7. Declan, what about you?
Thompson 8. because my birthday's 8, I always like the number 8 jersey, so this helped, but that's the first time I think I've had something in the back of my jersey since Hooper 88. I like Gary Hooper when he played for us, but it was last week we were telling you the story about Efren Juarez 4. There was another guy I had in my jersey because I just liked him right away when he came in, so that one probably didn't work out as well as...
And he asked you for a photograph.
Not at all. But it's weird again how football circles come round, because I think he's still at New York City with Ronnie Dyler, but it's always been 8. So Thompson, and then Bruni, and I had Hooper 88, and now Kyogo 8. So the 8.
But you'll remember,
my jersey.
You didn't used to be able to get numbers and names. Celtic didn't have it. Like, it wasn't until, I guess, mid-90s. There was like maybe even 95, 96.
I wasn't even a squint my dad's eye in the mid-90s.
I know.
You know what I mean? So,
1994.
Was it
1994 was when we started in domestic games. There had been fleeting moments in European games and such like where we wore numbers on the back. But 94 is when we were forced to start wearing numbers on the back of the jersey.
But with no name, though. It was numbers.
No name.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, no name.
In fact, I do remember, I actually got number 9, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, but didn't have Van Hooijdonk. I just had the 9 on the back of the first strip that he had. So
yeah, the one we won a Scottish Cup in.
Yeah, that one.
Brilliant. Superb. There we go. Reminiscing about Celtic jerseys. But on the point of centre forwards, JP and Odsonne Edouard, and these comments that we hear, and there's, I'm not going to call them uneducated, but they're just incorrect and inaccurate. How could you possibly say his market value? What are you basing that on? That his market value is £5 million. Yes, he didn't have the best season last season, but when his agent is looking around in terms of who's interested in him, the record, when you look at the goals scored, he'll be looking at some of the goals scored in Europe, for example, the AC Milan, etc. He scores in a Scottish Cup final. The thing with Edouard is we don't think he's performed to his full potential, but he's not become a bad player overnight. And if Celtic are doing a deal at this moment in time, it will be for 4 times Charlie Adams' value of the player.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't see this pattern about current players being able to have a voice in the media, especially if you're going to try and be a shock jock. I just can't get on board with that. I can't subscribe to it. It's why I have so much issue with Chris Boyd. Chris Boyd had already started doing what he's doing now, whilst he was still playing for Kilmarnock and being this kind of controversial figure and everything else. Like Chris Sutton, you could say always like trying to be like Chris Sutton. Chris Sutton didn't start doing punditry until years after he retired.
Yeah,
I don't think. It's just my personal opinion, but I don't think unless you're just going to go and be like Marvin Bartley or Scott Brown and be a part of a panel on a football match and just offer your thoughts on a football match and not veer off piste and start giving your tuppence worth on how much you think a player's worth. Like that. Those two are two different things to me. I just don't think it should be allowed. You talk about SFA not allowing, like Strachan to come and work for us for 3 months in a consultancy role. Charlie Adams shouldn't be allowed in these shows and given a voice because it's just not right. It's a bit weird, and I don't subscribe to the fact that he's become a £5 million player. Everybody knows how good Edouard is. He's not far off 100 goals for Celtic, which is it's a bit of a galling thing that he could make the 100 club if he did stick about. The weird thing is he's not actually come out and said anything. It's all pure speculation, and everybody's just made their mind up that Eddie wants to leave and he's unhappy and this, that, and the next thing. I have no idea what's going on in his life, whether he's doesn't he like Glasgow or what. I mean, I have no idea. No, he's not said anything. There's been no comments from his agent, from him personally, from the manager on him. The comments the other day about losing him for nothing from Ange Postecoglou was a little bit concerning because the first time it actually became a reality that he might not leave and he'll stay and run out his contract, and then he goes for nothing, which I don't think anybody would be all right with. I mean, would you?
No. The only scenario in which I would accept that is if he stays, he's on the top of his game, he scores 30 goals and we win a treble and we do something in Europe. Yeah. That's the only time I'd accept it. But on the current form and with his current demeanour, I can't see that. I can't see it being like a light switch, JP, where all of a sudden he gets his mojo back and he starts performing again. So that was a concern. Ange Postecoglou saying that. I mean, Will McMillan comes in on YouTube to say if Frimpong is worth 11, double it for Eddie. I think if you look at the Frimpong deal, you look at the Ayer deal, then, you then say Eddie's worth 5 million. I don't think you know what you're talking about in terms of football. Someone else comes in to say that feed the bear. Always a pleasure to see you. Coming in on the comments, I'll get the ACSOM on my tap for going back to the games. Well, just buy the top. Buy the ACSOM top. The stock has arrived. We had a few of these jerseys in the studio because we're dipping our toe into quality merchandise, JP. We're not just, flogging a dead horse. Quality merchandise, all embroidered, etc., with our logos that we own on the jerseys. And a wee sample, dipping our toe in the water, completely sold out just by one post on Facebook. So we had to order some new stock in. It'll be on the website by the end of today, hopefully ACSOM.net. And that will obviously help to finance the running of ACSOM and all the other various shows that we put out on a daily basis as well. If anyone else is watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. We're growing the channel on YouTube. And if you do subscribe, you might win a monthly prize. This month, JP, the Fratellis with Costello Music as a platinum disc. It was presented to John Fratelli for 600,000 sales, which I think makes it a double platinum of that debut album. What was your thoughts on the Fratellis? You would have seen them a few times.
No, not really, no. Chelsea Dagger, they used to play at Celtic Park every single time we scored. We scored quite a lot, if you remember. At that time, we were absolutely tonking teams, and I got sick of it. I was like, please just change the record. Like, it's a good song. Obviously, it's a good song and it's catchy as in, and I get, why. But I mean, bring back the Pogues or something else like Fiesta. That was a good one when we scored. But the Chelsea Dagger thing just it ran dry. But I know he's a big Celtic fan, isn't he, John Fratelli? They're all apparently really nice guys. My pal Raymond's pals with them, so yeah. But they never really registered with me. It wasn't. I think I just missed the boat on them. They were. If I had maybe been about 5 or 6 years younger, I'd have probably been all over it. But I'm not sure what I was into at that time. Probably I was listening to. That was probably when I started listening to Twilight Sad and Frightened Rabbit and stuff like that. Right about that time, so I was on their bus and not the Fratelli's bus.
Not the Fratelli's bus. And I think Chelsea Dagger was the name of one of their girlfriends, a burlesque dancer, Chelsea Dagger. Now, Northern Pros, I don't think he should be on Twitch trying to do that, buy the gear. I'm quite sure he's talking about the ACSOM top over my left shoulder. Robert Baker, Ayer earned his move. Edouard isn't earning much right now. Totally agree with that, Robert. I really do. I just think, again, credit to Ryan Christie. It's very difficult, I think, for a footballer once their head has left the building, JP, copyright, for them to come back into the game. I think that must be very difficult because they've checked out, and I think that massive credit is deserving of Ryan Christie, Declan, because he's managed to check back in. I don't know for how long, but to be able to then find that motivation again, and some people might say, they get paid this and that, that's their job. Yeah, it is. But I think you need to be switched on, top level of any sport, to be able to perform. So credit to Christie for being able to do that this season as well, so far.
Yeah, again, in Sunday, Paul, I thought he was outstanding. I mean, the assists were terrific. Nutmeg the guy, played that ball right, and it shows he's got a real footballer's brain in terms of just knowing where the space would be, and the two of them just clicked perfectly. I mean, the third goal, the ball through is just so perfectly weighted through to Kyogo, and he knows he's going to make that run, so he's playing that ball in there. And even, playing as that on the left-hand side so much last season, we saw him playing the right-hand side of that 4-2-3-1 and then coming centrally. I mean, as a left winger, he looks absolutely brilliant. If he's, up for giving us another year and then going for a fee next summer, I'd definitely take him because he's given his all, and that's all we can really ask for. But, back to Edouard, Ollie McBurney went for 20 million quid to Sheffield United, so if he's worth 20 million, then surely to God, Edward's no far off it, or if more, because, for what I've watched Ollie McBurney in a Scotland jersey, never mind him playing for Sheffield United, he is absolutely honking.
Another great quote for Declan. Absolutely honking. For all our new viewers in Australia and Japan, Declan, what does that mean? Absolutely honking. Not a very good player.
Not a very good player.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Charlie Adam and his combined transfer fees, which I think come in at about £13.5 million or something there or thereabouts, which I think astonishing, but not as astonishing as Oliver Burke's £33.2 million. And I would challenge anybody to tell me a Scottish player who has cost more than Oliver Burke. And I find that absolutely astonishing for a boy who's only 24 years of age. And someone did say on Twitter a couple of months ago when we were getting stick, ACSOM is definitely the worst thing ever to come out of Fife. Well, Oliver Burke was born in Kirkcaldy, so I don't know if that is right. Now, someone, Robert Baker, you're asking for a link to the Twitch page. Well, I'm just going to stick it up in one of the comments here, and you should be able to find us from there. That's it up on the comments now. That's our Twitch.
The only thing I've ever watched on Twitch is Lemmy driving about in an American highway in a kind of big truck, and he just drives around like chats nonsense and drives around, and it's bizarrely therapeutic. I don't know how long I could watch it for, but it's pretty good. Pretty good fun.
The thing is, JP, I says to Kelvin, who's a videographer at State of Mind, that when I went into the Twitch thing, because obviously I had to set up an account, I felt as though I was entering a completely different dimension. Yeah. It was like I was watching Total Recall or something. That was a different world for me. A world I didn't feel that comfortable in. However, it is another platform and people use it. So, if they use Twitch, they prefer that over YouTube or Facebook. It's there and you can watch us on there, and we are able to put it out. So enjoy it if you are a Twitch user. And as I say, some of the guys, Colin, for example, Russell, like a bit of gaming. And we might start doing stuff like that as well. So Odds and Edward then, Declan, if indeed there is something lined up, and obviously tonight could be his last appearance in a Celtic jersey. I guess we could be saying that every single week until such times that he leaves. If he does leave in this window, where does that leave him in terms of Angie's plans? Do you change much after the resounding defeat of Dundee at the weekend?
No, I wouldn't change it at all. I mean, bringing Stephen Welsh into the back four was the right decision for me, because I just think he's a lot more natural as a defender. Joe Hart, you could hear him shouting and bawling at the two of them. And even Starfelt, he kind of made a wee bit of an error earlier in the game, and the fans kind of went for him a wee bit, not in a bad way, but as if, can he do that here, son? So I think Stephen Welsh beside him, I just feel a lot more comfortable with. Ralston, again, has come into a game. I mean, that's his goal, 2-2. Brilliant goal. I mean, it's not a fluke. I mean, the touch and then, the turning nutmegs the guy as well. So, again, it'll be the same two fullbacks, I'd imagine. I thought the three worked in midfield really well, playing McGregor as the 6, and then Turnbull as the 8 and Rogic as the 10. Again, another great goal from Tom Rogic, one of his better performances that we've seen in later. And again, Turnbull looked a lot more on it. I think he maybe just a wee bit more comfortable there. And McGregor playing that different role, but breaking up play, dropping in to help Starfelt and Welsh. Two wingers, and this man just seemed to click really, really well. And they're really direct and go at teams. And I think that's what's going to be something that Jablonec will fear tonight, that, with the crowd roaring everybody on, and if we, get our tails up early on, it could be quite messy. So, no, I wouldn't change the team at all.
The manager's said that as well, hasn't he? He's alluded to the fact that his players are probably not used, not like footballers over the last year, but just generally not used to playing in front of a crowd like a Celtic Park crowd on a European night. Fair comment, Declan McConville. Would you agree with that, JP? Is there any changes you would make or you would like to see made tonight?
I mean, I want revenge over Hearts on Sunday, because I saw so much crowing from Hearts fans that I know, and non-Hearts fans as well. So I want to batter them on Sunday, and I mean batter them.
You're talking about the team, not the Hearts fans.
No, I'd actually probably batter them physically. I want them. I want them dispatched. I might live to regret those comments, and we'll get dumped out of the cup on Sunday. But no, I just. Because that should never have happened at Tynecastle. Last minute winner. That's what we do to them, not the other way around. So Maybe might change some things with an eye to Sunday. I don't know. Just, but I think nobody deserves to be dropped from Sunday's game. For my thinking, everybody was totally on it. Ralston, for me, has probably played his way into being the number 2 right back. I mean, we're clearly going to sign a right back. I mean, there's been so much speculation. If we close this transfer window and we haven't signed a right back of repute, I think all of us will. There might be a car park incident, put it that way, because how could we possibly go through the rest of the season with just Anthony Ralston at right back? So I hope that the talk of, is it Juranovic? From Legia Warsaw.
Yeah.
I mean that, and international.
A couple of million quid, £2.5 million quid.
Yeah, and they're obviously having to shed players because they've not qualified for the Champions League. Something that might hit a club closer to home very shortly as well. There'll be tiny violins for that moment, I'm sure. But yeah, I'd take him in a heartbeat. Sounds like good pedigree. And tonight, I'm just looking forward to seeing Furuhashi rip it up again, because I mean, if he thought that was good on Sunday, tonight he'll probably be a bubbling mess by the end of it. Because if the Green Brigade come up with a song for him midway through this game tonight and it catches on, place is just going to take off,
Oh, absolutely.
I hope it's not the one that mentions Ryan Kent though, because I don't want him getting a mention in a Celtic song. As much as Wham! Wake Me Up Before You Go is a good song, I don't want Ryan Kent mentioned in a Celtic song. As far as I'm concerned, the guy's, he's nothing to me.
Oh, I like that, JP. You're on form the day you're going to butter Hearts fans, and Kent is nothing to you. Yes, we're fighting back. We're fighting back. Good point. Snick67 YouTube chat is brutal. I'm glad it's on Twitch now. No, but it's fair dues. I mean, obviously you get infiltrators, and I learned the other day that you can switch the chat off to anyone who doesn't subscribe whilst you're doing a broadcast. So that's something that I'm going to be looking into as well. But yeah, if you prefer the chat over on Twitch, it's good that we're on there now. Snick67. The Ralston question, I think where we are now, beginning of the season, you're looking at, Colin and I on one of the pre-season shows, maybe even before it, JP, were talking about the potential back four, and we called it. We called the back four against Midtjylland, and we did that months ago, but it was tongue-in-cheek. And of course, part of that was Ralston at right back. He's played 5 games in a row for the first time in his Celtic career. That's the first time he's ever done that, right? And I keep making the point, if he was a 19, 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old coming through for the first time, and this was the first 5 games that you've seen of Tony Ralston, you'd be thinking, what a prospect we've got here. Right, but because there's this baggage of the fact that over the 5-year piece, people have written him off, people have not been impressed with him up until this season to a large degree following his kind of breakthrough season. It's taken him a wee bit longer to win a lot of the fan base over, but he looks up for that challenge. Regardless of all that, like you say, Celtic are still going to bring in a right back because we can't run with O'Connor, Urhoghide and Welsh out of position behind Ralston. That's just a no-no. And I mean, O'Connor's actually started playing for the B team this week as well, scored against Bo'ness. So you're absolutely right. We're going to have to bring one in. It looks as though, according to Sky Sports this morning, Juranovic is the front runner, £2.5 million signing. If we bring him in, and Henry, the Frenchman, that's another 10 million quid, and we still need a left back. So we'll see how that goes, and a centre half, potentially. So,
well, what I was going to say, the thing that worries me with that is, I think from the board's perspective, and it's something that really worries me, is we're short in right back, and obviously if Edward commands a big fee, that'll be the 2 positions that will strengthen. But it worries me that from a board perspective, they might look at the left back position and go, we've got 3 players in here, one in Montgomery, a player that we spent a good few million quid on, a balding goalie. I would maybe be hesitant to replace them until they're out the door, like what happened with the Iron Starfield deal. And again, them thinking that they're Beaton's a centre half, whereas we all know he's not. So that worries me in terms of positionally where we are at, that we might only sign 2 rather than sign 4, which is what we all know we need to do, really.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like you say, they might say, we're pretty well covered at left back. I think Ko Itakura, Manchester City, centre half, if we bring him in, it'll probably be a loan So I'm not going to be surprised if we bring in one or two loans to try and shore up some of the positions. Prediction for tonight, JP Mason?
I don't really do them, but okay. 3-1 Celtic.
3-1 Celtic. Declan McConville.
4-0 Celtic.
Oh, I love that. The positivity is just oozing out of Declan McConville today. Leo Held could be on his way to Leeds. So we brought in someone to consult over the Celtic B team, the academy, that gateway, the pathway to the first team. It seems as though, unfortunately, Declan, it's maybe a wee bit too late for the likes of Leo Held. We've already lost Okoflex, Angelini's away, and previous to that, we've lost players to Man City, Blackburn Rovers, Bayern Munich, who hadn't even kicked the ball for the first team. It's unfortunate because Held does look as though he has some great potential.
He looked decent enough at Ross County. Obviously, John Hughes' comments about him too. But yeah, there's just so many players that I've checked out, younger players to go and pursue a career somewhere else, where there obviously is a clear pathway from that development squad into the first team squad. And, this season so far, there's a lot of players in that B squad that are looking like a player we know. And Moffat in pre-season looked great, and he's still doing it just now. And he's playing against, Maine, and he's doing it. It's not as if he's playing against people at his own age level, and they're battering teams at times, Celtic. So maybe just a wee bit too late for him. But if there's a kind of clear plan for him at Leeds and how we can make the progress into the first team, it's probably why he's going there. So it's something that we do need to sort out, that players think they can go into their academy and be in the first team and have that opportunity.
Yeah, so we're actually saying that we agree that we need somebody to come in and have a look at that pathway, but we understand some fans' frustrations that it might be Strachan. That's if we've not breached Article 13 of the SFA rules, of course. Just running through some of the really positive predictions for tonight. I've left the best till last from Stephen Coulthard, 7-0. Here's hoping, Stephen. Here's hoping that there's some coming back.
It could have been 7 or maybe even 10 on Sunday against Dundee.
10 on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's a free scoring element. Scored 10 goals in 2 games coming into this game here. The confidence is oozing in the team, particularly offensively. I do see a lot of goals, but I'm still not convinced at the back. I still think that
no.
a team of any quality might get a goal here and there.
That's why I said 3-1, because I can't see us not conceding, and it probably won't be Joe Hart's fault anyway. It'll be somebody letting somebody run off them or whatever, as we saw in the first game. It was those goals that we lost in the first game last week against Jablonec were preventable. But I loved the one thing I loved about, there's many things I loved about Sunday. Just walking out of Celtic Park with a smile on my face again was. Actually, I've not been too used to that, because we've all just been sitting at home, watching this calamity on our TV screens. We've not been at the game to see it. So, but we're seeing the players really going for it, even in the final couple of minutes. I think it was Christie and maybe Ralston that were both basically going for the same ball from a corner or a cross right at the end, and you're like, they're still massively we're 6-0 up. There's no need for them to still be like that. But you saw them, just going full pelt, and it was actually a reflection of the praised and maligned video that was released of Postecoglou saying, "We don't stop until the final whistle. You just keep on at them." Some people were sceptical about whether that was staged or not. I don't think it was. I think from the interviews you've seen with Postecoglou that he's a pretty straight up guy. He's not the type of guy that's going to go, right, let's set up this video shoot and I'm going to say this and make sure you release that as a soundbite. I think it was just purely they caught him saying what he would say without a camera there.
I heard them shouting that on Sunday. It was 83 minutes. I looked up at the clock and he was shouting, keep going, keep moving, keep going forward, don't stop, and he was shouting that. So as you say, definitely not staged. And how many times have we watched Celtic the past few years and they get to, maybe 3 goals and just let their foot off the gas, whereas Sunday it was just right on it, get more goals.
Yeah.
The Hans thing you're saying, there's no way it's staged. I agree with that, JP. There's a great video, it popped up yesterday on my playlist on YouTube, of Ange Postecoglou going toe-to-toe with an Australian broadcaster called Craig Foster. And you just think to yourself, he's not having any of that. And we've seen a couple of elements of it with the Scottish press as well. So long may that continue.
Oh, you found a blip, did you? You found one. Oh, well done. Brilliant.
Superb. Listen, I've really enjoyed that today. We're back tonight, 7:15, to cover the Celtic game pre-match and so forth. And enjoy the game, lads. I will be covering the game from the studio. And throughout the season, I'm not sure who will be using John Paul Dykes' season ticket, but I will certainly be ensuring that every game is covered on ACSOM. So thank you, everybody, for getting involved in the numerous areas that you can now watch a Celtic State of Mind's Bulletin, including Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and a few others in there as well. So hopefully you enjoyed the show. Thank you to JP Mason and to Declan McConville for joining me once again on A Celtic State of Mind.